The world does not play fair. You can be honest and still be betrayed. You can be the most skilled in the room and still watch a less qualified name take your seat. That isn't cynicism. It's the operating system of reality. The ones who recognize this early learn to survive, and the ones who survive long enough learn to rule. Power of this kind doesn't pose for photographs. It's sensed rather than seen. Call it dark intelligence. It is forged when plans collapse, when your name is dragged, when your best effort fails in public. Some people shatter under that pressure. Others are tempered by it. They become quieter, sharper, more observant. They stop competing on volume and start competing on timing. While others argue, they gather signal. While tempers spike, they calculate. While a room drowns in emotion, they sketch the future. Most people are moving checkers. You're about to learn the geometry of chess. Before we proceed, a warning. This is a shield, not a weapon. Use it to protect yourself, not to prey on others. We're here to understand the game, not to become the villain. Today we'll explore 8 psychological traits that separate survivors from victims, leaders from followers, winners from the permanently aggrieved. If you're ready, anchor yourself with a simple affirmation. I choose to be strategically intelligent, not emotionally reactive. Now let's unlock the techniques powerful people prefer you never master. Trait 1. Calculated opacity. You do not broadcast your full intent. You reveal only what is necessary when it is necessary. When people know only half the story, they rush to complete it with imagination. And imagination is easier to steer than facts. Niccolò Machiavelli observed, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few know what you are." The most intriguing people you've met practice this intuitively. They leave purposeful gaps in their narratives. They answer questions with questions. They smile exactly where an explanation would ordinarily begin. This is not lying. This is strategic communication. In most conversations, someone asks and we feel obligated to serve a complete answer. Our motives, our fears, our blueprints. We think we're building trust, but very often we're surrendering leverage. Mystery, properly used, creates influence. Withheld details drive curiosity. Curiosity breeds attention. Attention hardens into respect, and respect matures into influence. A small example. Someone asks about your weekend. The default script says, "Just staying home, maybe watching some movies." That's total transparency, and entirely forgettable. A strategically opaque reply, "I've got something important to take care of," followed by a graceful pivot. One version makes you predictable, the other makes you interesting. This is not permission to be rude, evasive, or cryptic for sport. It's a discipline of selectivity. What you disclose, to whom, and when. The most effective operators in any field practice it relentlessly. They reveal enough to keep people engaged, never so much that they lose the initiative. Your information is currency. Do not spend it all at once. When your words are rare, each one carries more weight. The aim is not to be mysterious for its own sake. The aim is control of your narrative, of the frame, and of the tempo of your relationships. There's a deeper logic here. Humans overestimate how clearly they broadcast their inner world. A cognitive glitch, sometimes called the illusion of transparency. We assume others can read us. They cannot. Calculated opacity works because most people fill empty spaces with projections of their own needs and fears. In professional life, this protects projects from premature scrutiny. In negotiations, it keeps your alternatives off the table until the price of disclosure is worth paying. In personal life, it prevents casual acquaintances from becoming custodians of your vulnerabilities. Practical habits. Delay your answer by a beat longer than comfort allows. Ask clarifying questions before you respond. Segment your updates by audience. Colleagues get facts. Friends get context. Inner circle gets motives. Build a bias to undershare today so you can overdeliver tomorrow. Trait 2. Adaptive persona. You are not the same to everyone because everyone is not the same to you. You adjust how you show up to match the language and logic of the person across the table. People believe they know you, but they know a version tuned to their bandwidth. Machiavelli advised a prince to appear merciful, faithful, humane, upright, and devout. The verb matters appear because perception is the interface through which power moves. This isn't fakery, it's effectiveness. You already modulate without thinking, one voice for your grandmother, another for your closest friends, another for an interview. Adaptive persona makes this natural flexibility intentional and precise. Start with a scan. Is this person analytical? Lead with structure, numbers, precedent. Are they relational? Lead with empathy, shared purpose, social proof. Are they practical? Show the mechanism, timelines, clear next steps. Big picture visionary. Paint outcomes and second-order effects. High context communicator. Read subtext. Listen for what's not said. Low context? Be explicit. Remove ambiguity. Think of water. It takes the shape of its container without losing its essence. Your values are the essence. Your expression is the container. Authenticity is not the same performance everywhere. Authenticity is consistent principle beneath variable presentation. The mistake is believing that being real means being rigid. In reality, rigidity often masquerades as virtue, but functions as laziness, an excuse not to learn other dialects of human attention. Adaptive persona has hard edges. There are lines you do not cross. Your core principles, your non-negotiables, your long-term identity, those are fixed. The facet may change. The stone remains the same. Without boundaries, adaptation collapses into appeasement, and appeasement curdles into resentment. To prevent that slide, codify your floor. The truths you won't sell to win a meeting, the standards you won't lower to keep a room, the tactics you won't use even if they work today, but cost you tomorrow. With the floor in place, adaptability turns into a superpower. In leadership, it's the difference between a message that lands and a memo that dies. In sales or diplomacy, it's the difference between pushing and being invited. In relationships, it is the art of speaking the other person's love language without abandoning your own. Here's the operational kit. Mirror pace and tone lightly, never mock, simply match. Translate your proposal into their preferred unit, risk reduced, status gained, effort saved, future protected. Ask one diagnostic question early. What would make this a win for you in 6 months? And anchor your pitch to that answer. Practice sensory switching. When a conversation stalls, change channel, draw a quick sketch, tell a story, show a prototype, run a micro-simulation. And remember the paradox. The person with the widest range of expressions can be the most consistent leader, because they reduce friction for others to understand and adopt the mission. Threading both traits is a single promise. You will stop leaking power unconsciously. Calculated opacity ends the oversharing that makes you predictable. Adaptive persona ends the one-note delivery that makes you ignorable. Together, they generate a quiet gravity. People lean in because there are no wasted words, and because those words arrive in a dialect tuned to their thinking. In a noisy age, that combination feels like authority. Hold the warning close. Never let technique outrun ethics. The point is not to trick anyone into anything. The point is to guard your narrative, respect other minds, and move complex situations toward better outcomes with less collateral damage. If you can do that, you've taken your first steps from checkers to chess. Trait 3. The principle of detachment. It sounds simple. Don't cling to outcomes, possessions, or people. But it cuts against everything modern culture trains us to do. We are raised on attachment, to validation, to likes, to certainty, to comfort. Yet what you cannot release will one day own you. Detachment is the power that begins where desperation ends. It is not coldness. It is clarity. It means that your peace is no longer rented out to circumstances or people's approval. Machiavelli once wrote, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is safer to be feared than loved." He wasn't celebrating cruelty. He was recognizing leverage. The person unafraid of loss cannot be manipulated by the threat of it. That's the paradox of freedom. The less you cling, the stronger your grip becomes. Look around any organization, any relationship, any political structure. Attachment governs behavior. Employees swallow mistreatment because they fear unemployment. Lovers stay in decaying relationships because they fear loneliness. Citizens accept corruption because they fear instability. Fear of loss is the leash that tames most human ambition. Detachment cuts that leash. It allows you to operate with equanimity in chaos, to negotiate from strength rather than scarcity. Picture two negotiators across a table. One has bet everything on closing this deal. The other has other clients, other paths, other sources of meaning. The second negotiator's silence weighs more than the first one's argument. Because freedom speaks louder than words. Detachment also brings perspective. When you are not obsessed with being right, you can perceive multiple angles of truth. When you are not desperate to keep a relationship, you can finally see whether it's built on mutual respect or mutual fear. When you are not chained to your own plans, you can pivot faster when reality changes. Entire nations rise and fall on this principle. Empires that can't abandon outdated strategies decay. The ones that adapt survive. The same is true for individuals. But detachment is not apathy. It does not mean I don't care. It means I care deeply, but I am not enslaved by the outcome. The samurai called it mushin, no mind, a state in which emotion is felt but not allowed to cloud action. In business psychology, it resembles what high performers call process focus, attention on controllables, surrender of the rest. In spirituality, it echoes Stoicism's core. Distinguish between what's within your control and what's not. Across cultures, across centuries, the elite minds converge on the same conclusion. Attachment breeds anxiety, detachment breeds strength. Train it in small doses. Delay reacting to insults. Let someone else have the last word and feel your ego twitch but not move. Skip a comfort you habitually rely on, a drink, a scroll, a compliment, and watch yourself survive. These micro-rehearsals prepare you for macro tests. Losing a job, ending a toxic partnership, pivoting a dream. Detachment is a muscle. It builds through resistance. And as it grows, your demeanor changes. You no longer chase attention. It gravitates to you. Because the world senses it, people respect what they cannot easily rattle. That's why the calmest voice in a storm always sounds like leadership. Trait 4. Silent leverage. Power rarely needs to announce itself. Inexperienced people shout, experienced ones position. Silent leverage is the art of rearranging the chessboard so that others' best moves still benefit you. It's less about domination, more about architecture. Building environments where outcomes lean in your favor regardless of who claims victory. Never was anything great achieved without danger, Machiavelli warned. And danger includes the danger of exposure. The more visible your push, the easier it is to resist. Real influence hides its fingerprints. In practice, silent leverage begins with patience. You do not pressure, you prepare. You do not corner, you create conditions. For instance, instead of demanding recognition, become the person whose absence stalls progress. Influence earned that way is more permanent than titles, because people's self-interest keeps it alive. In conversation, silence itself becomes a lever. Most people flee it, spilling secrets to fill the void. When you can tolerate the pause, others start to shape their words around your quiet. That's psychological gravity. It's what negotiators call the flinch, the moment of stillness after an offer that makes the other side doubt their position. It's also what strategists call optional power, strength derived from having credible alternatives you don't need to state aloud. On a geopolitical scale, silent leverage defines entire doctrines. During the Cold War, deterrence depended not on action, but on the credible possibility of action. Nations didn't need to pull triggers. They needed to maintain posture. The same logic scales down to corporate boardrooms and family dynamics. You don't have to threaten to walk away from a deal or a relationship. The calm willingness to do so radiates more force than any ultimatum. Ethically, silent leverage must be anchored. Used well, it guides people toward decisions that help them and you simultaneously. Used poorly, it becomes manipulation. The difference is intent. Ask yourself before each maneuver, does this serve the long-term integrity of both sides? If yes, it's strategy. If no, it's coercion. A leader with silent leverage cultivates loyalty by making others stronger, not weaker. They invest quietly, empower others to succeed, and allow gratitude, not fear, to do the work of control. This power takes time. You cannot build it in the heat of conflict, and it's accumulated in the calm before. It's stored credibility, stored competence, stored character. Each kept promise adds to it, each broken one spends it. Eventually, you'll notice that you no longer need to compete for authority. It will arrive by consensus. People will look to you for cues, and you won't need to raise your voice. That's the summit of silent leverage, when your mere presence recalibrates the room. Trait 5. Psychological echo. Influence begins with understanding. Most people broadcast, few truly receive. Psychological echo is the ability to reflect others' hidden fears and desires back to them so precisely that they feel seen. And once they feel seen, they listen. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, Machiavelli said. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few know what you are. The echo bridges that divide. It's empathy weaponized for clarity, not cruelty. People don't buy ideas. They buy the emotion those ideas promise to satisfy. They don't follow leaders. They follow the version of themselves that leader seems to believe in. The one who understands this principle commands attention without demanding it. Psychological echo starts with listening, but not the shallow kind where you wait for your turn to speak. It's investigative listening, mapping tone, pace, metaphors, word choices. Every complaint hides a need. Every boast hides an insecurity. Your job is to hear the subtext. When someone says, "I'm so busy," they might mean, "I want to feel significant." When someone says, "I hate this place," they might mean, "I don't feel recognized." Reflect that meaning, not just the sentence. Sounds like you've been carrying the team without much acknowledgement. That line builds a bridge faster than 1,000 facts. This is not manipulation, it's calibration. When you reflect people accurately, they lower their defenses. Their nervous system recognizes safety. That's why great negotiators, therapists, and diplomats all use similar phrasing. It sounds like, "It seems that," you're saying. Simple mirrors that prove you heard the emotion, not just the content. From there, influence follows naturally. Because once people feel understood, they start to seek your perspective. They grant you permission to steer the conversation, sometimes even their behavior. Advanced practitioners take it further. They learn people's value language: security, recognition, freedom, control, and translate their proposals accordingly. To the security-minded, frame stability. To the ambitious, frame achievement. To the free-spirited, frame autonomy. The idea stays constant. The echo changes frequency. Used ethically, this builds trust that lasts. Used cynically, it breeds dependence. Again, the boundary is intent. Together, detachment, silent leverage, and psychological echo form a triangle of subtle power. Detachment frees you from being controlled. Silent leverage positions you to influence without display. Psychological echo connects you to human nature so that your influence lands. They're the invisible disciplines of every strategist, diplomat, and leader who survives more than one cycle of fortune. You won't master them overnight. But if you start today, observing your attachments, measuring your silences, listening beneath words, you'll notice a shift. Less reaction, more design. Less noise, more control. That's dark intelligence in motion. Trait 6, ambiguous morality. You're not purely good, and you're not purely bad. You're effective. True power doesn't live in moral extremes. It operates in the gray, where decisions have weight, and every action leaves a trace. This is the most controversial element of dark intelligence, because it dares to admit what society pretends not to know: that survival and virtue don't always intersect. Machiavelli, condemned by idealists and studied by kings, wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose between the two." He wasn't glorifying tyranny. He was describing the mathematics of consequence in a world that punishes naivete. Ambiguous morality doesn't mean being ruthless. It means being responsible for outcomes, not appearances. Modern culture worships optics. How kind you seem, how progressive your language sounds, how morally polished your profile looks. But the world isn't changed by performative goodness. It's moved by effective decisions. And effective decisions, by nature, often offend someone. The leader who fires a dishonest employee protects the many at the cost of appearing harsh. The executive who cancels a failing project saves the company, but breaks a few dreams. The general who chooses one battlefield over another sacrifices a village to save a nation. The parent who tells a brutal truth instead of comforting a lie may wound their child's heart for a moment, but armor their mind for life. Morality that never risks discomfort isn't morality. It's decoration. Let's look deeper. Ethics in practice is situational calculus, not universal geometry. What is good in one context can be destructive in another. Honesty, for instance, is virtuous in friendship, but can ruin delicate diplomacy. Mercy is noble until it enables harm. Discipline is wise until it turns into cruelty. The world moves in paradoxes, and power demands that you recognize them without losing your compass. The danger of moral absolutism is paralysis. You become afraid to decide at all. But ambiguous morality doesn't erase your ethics. It refines them. It demands you define your non-negotiables, the lines you will never cross, and then navigate the gray with courage and clarity. That's maturity, the ability to live with the burden of imperfect decisions. This trait is everywhere in geopolitics, where nations constantly balance ethics against interests. A country may negotiate with questionable regimes to secure resources that sustain millions of citizens back home. Is that evil? Or pragmatic compassion at scale? Economists call this the utilitarian paradox. Maximizing collective good often requires local compromises. The same principle rules in business and leadership. You can't always protect everyone and still protect the mission. As one strategist put it, leadership means disappointing people at a rate they can absorb. The greats, Lincoln, Churchill, Lee Kuan Yew, understood this. They made decisions that cost them admiration in the short term, but built civilizations in the long one. Ambiguous morality also trains emotional resilience. When you accept that you cannot please everyone, criticism loses its sting. When you stop chasing universal approval, you start pursuing universal impact. You become immune to manipulation by moral guilt, the favorite weapon of the weak. People will call you cold for not reacting, arrogant for standing firm, and heartless for choosing logic over sympathy. Let them. They're reading from an emotional script that keeps them predictable. Your job isn't to win popularity contests. It's to engineer outcomes that align with your values and your vision. The moment you understand this, judgment becomes background noise. But here's the line you must never cross: using gray morality for personal gain at others' expense. That's corruption, not strategy. The difference is intent and accountability. True dark intelligence takes full responsibility for the consequences of its actions. You own the ripple effects, the losses, and the lessons. You don't hide behind excuses like, "It's just business," or "Everyone does it." You know exactly what price was paid, and you make sure it wasn't wasted. That integrity, iron beneath the ambiguity, is what separates Machiavellian competence from sociopathic destruction. In a practical sense, ambiguous morality manifests as situational adaptability. In negotiations, it's knowing when to disclose and when to withhold. In leadership, it's balancing compassion with discipline. In self-management, it's allowing yourself to be flexible without becoming faithless. When applied ethically, this principle doesn't corrode your character. It strengthens it because you've tested it in fire. You no longer act from impulse. You act from calculation. Remember, the light without the shadow is blinding. Power without ethics is tyranny. Ethics without power is impotence. Ambiguous morality is the middle path, where results and responsibility coexist. Those who master it become difficult to defeat because they understand both sides of human nature, the ideal and the pragmatic, and can speak fluently to both. Trait 7. Controlled exposure. If ambiguous morality governs your internal compass, controlled exposure governs your external presence. In an age addicted to visibility, restraint has become a superpower. When everyone else floods timelines with details of their private lives, the person who reveals selectively commands curiosity, and curiosity is currency. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are so simple of mind and so much dominated by their immediate needs that a deceitful person will always find plenty who are ready to be deceived." The meaning: people fill informational voids with assumptions, and those assumptions are rarely accurate, but always revealing. Controlled exposure is the art of using mystery as structure, not disguise. It's not about hiding. It's about managing perception deliberately. Every revelation changes how you're evaluated, so you treat information like a strategic asset. Once revealed, it cannot be unrevealed. The average person speaks to be liked. The intelligent person speaks to be understood. The strategist speaks to be remembered. That's the difference. Start with the psychology. The brain despises uncertainty. It tries to close gaps. When you withhold just enough detail, you activate the curiosity gap. People lean forward, speculate, and engage. This happens in politics, marketing, even interpersonal attraction. Think of major world leaders: Putin, Obama, Xi, Elon Musk. agree or disagree with them, but they all mastered one thing: timing of exposure. They reveal pieces of their identity like controlled detonations. A quote here, a silence there. The less predictable they appear, the more others project power onto them. Practically, controlled exposure protects both reputation and leverage. In business, you don't reveal all your strategies in the boardroom. You unveil competence progressively so that people perceive constant growth instead of early saturation. In personal branding, you don't overshare your struggles. You narrate them selectively when they serve a purpose: to teach, to inspire, or to reframe your strength. In relationships, you don't dump your entire story on the first meeting. You build emotional investment over time. Each revelation becomes a reward for earned trust. Even governments use this. Diplomatic negotiations rely on strategic ambiguity, a cousin of controlled exposure. Ambiguity keeps adversaries guessing, prevents escalation, and leaves room for maneuver. You too can apply it in daily life. Leave room in your statements for interpretation, but ensure every possible interpretation benefits you. That's chess-level communication. A common mistake is equating openness with authenticity. People think transparency equals honesty, but honesty can exist within discretion. You can be sincere without being exposed. The most credible people are those who speak plainly when they speak, but know when silence speaks louder. It's the same principle used in filmmaking. The best directors don't show the monster. They show its shadow, and the audience's imagination does the rest. Digital life complicates this, of course. Every post, comment, and photo becomes part of your narrative. Controlled exposure means treating your online identity like a press office, not a diary. Share content that reinforces your long-term positioning, not your passing emotions. Once the internet knows something about you, it's eternal. So every disclosure should pass a triple filter. Is it true? Is it useful? Is it timeless? If it fails even one, delete before posting. And remember, controlled exposure isn't about manipulation, it's about authorship. You are writing your public biography in real time. Every word, every gesture, every absence becomes a sentence in that story. The question is, are you the author? Or are you letting strangers ghostwrite it for you? Together, ambiguous morality and controlled exposure create a psychological fortress. The first gives you moral flexibility. The second gives you informational security. One decides what you'll do. The other decides what they'll see you doing. That's how power sustains itself in a chaotic world, not by noise, but by narrative control. Trait 8. Outcome obsession. In the end, all strategy, morality, and perception converge toward one simple test. Did it work? People who understand power never confuse activity with progress or passion with results. They measure their worth not by applause, not by opinions, but by outcomes. Machiavelli said, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." Brutal, but true. Circumstances shift, alliances change, realities evolve. Those who cling to idealism while the battlefield changes get buried under their own principles. The professionals, the architects of history, adapt, but always with the outcome in mind. Outcome obsession isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It forces you to ask, before every action, what is the measurable result I seek? Most people never ask that. They want to be right, not effective. They want to win arguments, not wars. They want to look busy, not make impact. That's why so many talented people spend their lives defending opinions that never move the needle of reality. The outcome-obsessed think differently. They do not argue to dominate. They argue to diagnose. They do not plan to impress. They plan to execute. Every conversation, every decision, every silence serves a measurable direction. Take a common example. Two colleagues disagree. The emotionally reactive one wants to prove they were right all along. The strategically intelligent one wants the project to succeed. While the first gathers evidence for victory, the second gathers resources for completion. At the end, who really wins? Not the louder one, but the one whose plan survives contact with reality. The point isn't to silence others, it's to silence inefficiency. This mindset doesn't mean you disregard relationships or empathy. It means you understand that true loyalty and compassion flourish when results sustain them. No team, no relationship, no country survives on intentions alone. Outcome obsession manifests differently depending on scale. In geopolitics, it's the doctrine of realpolitik, decisions guided by national interest over sentiment. In business, it's operational discipline, key performance metrics driving creative chaos. In personal life, it's emotional maturity, choosing peace over pride, stability over drama. The common thread? Clarity. You know what you want, and you align every word, every choice, every resource to that direction. But here's the paradox. Results are born from process. You can't control outcomes directly. You control the systems that create them. That's why outcome obsession isn't the same as short-term thinking. The immature version chases dopamine hits, constant metrics, constant validation. The mature version obsesses over structure, feedback loops, repeatable excellence. The former burns out, the latter compounds. When you anchor yourself in long-term outcomes, you become immune to the noise of temporary emotions. That's how elite military units train. They simulate chaos until discipline replaces panic. The mission remains constant even when the battlefield shifts. Outcome obsession also dissolves ego. When your only loyalty is to results, you stop needing credit. You can let others take applause if it moves the larger mission forward. You start valuing usefulness over visibility. In a world of self-promoters, that humility becomes magnetic. People follow the one who prioritizes the mission over the mirror. It's why the most powerful figures in history rarely needed to say, "I'm in charge." The results said it for them. Yet this mindset demands ethical grounding. If you chase outcomes without a moral compass, you become dangerous to yourself and others. The most effective tyrants in history were outcome-obsessed but morally bankrupt. The difference between a strategist and a sociopath is conscience. Power must serve something beyond personal gain. Whether that's your team, your community, your principles, or humanity at large. Without that, the result may succeed temporarily, but collapses in legacy. True dark intelligence balances efficiency with ethics, victory with virtue. So, how do you develop outcome obsession without losing your humanity? Start small. Define the goal before every conversation. Before every decision, ask, what is the result I want, and is it worth the cost? Break your ambitions into actionable checkpoints. If the step doesn't move you closer to the goal, cut it. This surgical clarity makes you intimidating because indecisive people will feel exposed around you. But it also makes you free because you're no longer hostage to distractions, trends, or the endless moral theater of the crowd. Outcome obsession forces stillness inside chaos. When everyone else debates morality, optics, or fairness, you're already moving. You'll notice something fascinating. Once results appear, the same people who doubted you will reinterpret your methods as genius. History is written by the effective, not the emotional. That's why every enduring civilization, from Rome to Silicon Valley, was built by minds who valued outcomes over noise. Integration of the 8 traits. When combined, These 8 principles: calculated opacity, adaptive persona, detachment, silent leverage, psychological echo, ambiguous morality, controlled exposure, and outcome obsession, form the blueprint of dark intelligence. Each one alone grants a tactical edge. Together, they build strategic sovereignty. Let's tie them together. Calculated opacity teaches control of information. Adaptive persona teaches control of perception. Detachment teaches control of emotion. Silent leverage teaches control of timing. Psychological echo teaches control of connection. Ambiguous morality teaches control of judgment. Controlled exposure teaches control of narrative. And outcome obsession teaches control of direction. When you master all 8, you stop reacting to the world. You start designing it. Most people live reactively. Their emotions, their reputations, their attention are rented out to anyone who provokes them. They reveal too much, adapt too little, attach too fast, and negotiate too loudly. They confuse transparency with trust, morality with fragility, talk with progress. Dark intelligence rewires that entire system. It reclaims autonomy over the 3 things every empire, company, or individual needs to guard: information, perception, and time. Consider how these traits manifest in real-world strategy. Nations practice calculated opacity through intelligence agencies. Corporations apply adaptive personas through brand localization. Detachment underpins financial discipline, selling assets at the right time instead of clinging emotionally. Silent leverage defines the art of market positioning, building indispensability rather than pleading for attention. Psychological echo powers marketing psychology and diplomacy. Ambiguous morality allows leaders to make hard calls when all options are ugly. Controlled exposure drives media manipulation, deciding what story gets told and when. Outcome obsession dictates every war room. Success measured not by noise, but by metrics. Territory secured, markets captured, lives improved. These patterns repeat across history because human psychology doesn't evolve as fast as technology. Every boardroom battle, every political negotiation, every viral campaign is just a new skin for the same ancient game: power versus perception. And the players who last, the Churchills, the Mandelas, the strategists of every age, understand that emotion loses to information, noise loses to narrative, and fairness loses to foresight. That's not cynicism, it's physics. But power without principle corrodes. The reason we study dark intelligence isn't to imitate villains. It's to protect ourselves from them. By understanding how manipulation, leverage, and perception work, you become immune to them. You stop falling for emotional traps. You stop reacting to provocation. You stop surrendering your narrative to those louder but not wiser. The best defense in a deceptive world is strategic awareness. If you remember nothing else, remember this: darkness isn't evil. It's the part of intelligence that operates where light can't reach, where real decisions are made, where emotions are quiet, and where strength is born. The goal is not to become ruthless. It's to become resilient, not to destroy others, but to design yourself. You don't need to play dirty to win. You just need to play smart while others play blind. In the final analysis, the world will never play fair. But fairness was never the objective. Mastery was. The wise don't chase justice from a chaotic system. They build internal justice, internal balance, internal power. And once you hold that, no betrayal, no loss, no chaos can unmake you. That is dark intelligence. Not darkness for its own sake, but darkness transformed into strategy. Silence turned into strength. If this video has changed how you think about brutal lessons that forge unbreakable intelligence, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share your public declaration in the comments below, and let's create a community of unbreakable people. Remember, working smart instead of working hard. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.